The scent of blood cut through the morning mist like a blade. Lyra Thorne pressed herself against the rough bark of an ancient pine, her Omega instincts screaming at her to run. But she couldn't move, not when the hunters were so close, their voices carrying through the thornwood like promises of death. "The beast went this way," growled a voice she recognized with sickening dread. "Merrick Dune, the Northern Valepack enforcer. Lord Varric wants it alive." "Alive?" Another hunter laughed, cruel and sharp. "After what it did to his son, the silver chains won't hold something like that." "They will if we break its legs first." Lyra's stomach churned. She'd risen before dawn to gather moonbell flowers. They only bloomed in the hour before sunrise, and her healer mentor needed them for tomorrow's ceremony. As the weakest Omega in the Northern Valepack, she'd learned long ago that being useful was her only protection. Being invisible was even better. But now she was trapped between the hunting party and whatever creature they pursued. A branch snapped to her left, then another. Something massive was moving through the underbrush. Its breathing labored, leaving drops of crimson on the frost-covered leaves. The hunters' voices grew closer from the right. "Move, Lyra. Move now." She darted left, away from the voices, deeper into the part of the forest where even alphas feared to tread. The Darkwood, where ancient magic still lingered, and the boundary between worlds grew thin. Her worn boots slipped on the dew-slicked moss, her patched cloak catching on thorns that seemed to reach for her deliberately. The air here tasted different, older, charged with power that made her skin prickle. Twisted trees formed natural archways overhead, their branches so thick they blocked most of the pale morning light. Then she saw it. The wolf lay half-hidden beneath a fallen oak, its enormous form curled in on itself. Even wounded, it was the largest wolf she'd ever seen, black as midnight with strange silver markings that seemed to shimmer and shift in the dim light. Blood matted its fur from dozens of wounds. Silver-tipped arrows protruded from its shoulder and flank, but it was the eyes that stopped her heart. Amber like molten sun, ancient and intelligent, filled with pain but also awareness. This was no ordinary wolf, no common shifter. Those eyes held power that made her Omega nature want to bare her throat in submission, even as her healer's training urged her forward. The wolf's gaze locked onto hers, and she heard it not with her ears but in her mind, a whisper that shouldn't be possible. "Please. There, fresh tracks." Merrick's voice, terrifyingly close. Lyra looked at the wolf, then at the blood trail leading directly to its hiding spot. In minutes, they'd find it. They'd chain it, torture it, kill it slowly for whatever crime they believed it had committed. Every instinct told her to run. She was nothing, a packless Omega who'd been taken in out of pity, barely tolerated, certainly not valued. Beautiful enough to draw unwanted attention despite her low status, which only made her position more precarious. Merrick had always watched her with eyes that promised violence the moment she gave him an excuse. The wolf's breathing grew shallower. One massive paw twitched, trying to drag itself deeper into hiding but too weak to manage it. Foolish girl, she thought, even as she dropped to her knees beside the creature. This is how you die. Hold still, she whispered, her hands already working to snap the arrow shafts. The wolf didn't move, only watched her with those impossible amber eyes. The silver burned her fingers, interesting. Pure silver shouldn't affect her unless. No time to think. She grabbed handfuls of mud and moss, packing them over the worst wounds to mask the scent of blood. The wolf was too heavy to move, but she could. The trail ends here. Merrick's voice, directly above them on the ridge. Lyra threw herself over, the wolf's enormous form, spreading her cloak wide to cover as much of it as possible. She pressed her face into its neck, feeling the rapid heartbeat that matched her own terrified rhythm. "Be still," she prayed. "Be still. Be still. Be still. Wait." Another voice. "You smell that?" "Omega." Merrick spat the word like a curse. "That pathetic healer's apprentice. Lyra." She forced herself to sit up slowly, casually, as if she hadn't just been covering a creature 3 times her size. By some miracle or perhaps ancient forest magic, the wolf had seemed to shrink beneath her cloak, now appearing no larger than a normal injured dog. Master Dune," she stammered, letting her natural fear flavor her voice. "I was gathering moonbell flowers for—" "Get up." Marek stood at the ridge's edge, his scarred face twisted with suspicion. Now, she rose on shaking legs, keeping her body between him and the wolf. Is something wrong? I heard howling and… Did you see it? The black wolf? A wolf? She let her eyes go wide, the picture of Omega innocence. There was something. It ran that way. She pointed deeper into the dark wood. It was so fast I barely saw… Which way exactly? Marek's eyes narrowed. She pointed again, more definitively, toward the cursed ravine where no tracker could follow. Through the white trees, toward the old stones. The hunters exchanged glances. The white trees marked the boundary of the truly forbidden territory, where even alpha wolves became prey. You're certain? Marek descended the ridge, approaching her with predatory intent. Because if you're lying to me, little Omega… He grabbed her throat, not squeezing yet, just reminding her how easily he could. His alpha pheromones crashed over her, demanding submission, making her knees weak. She whimpered, the sound real and pathetic. I saw it go that way, she whispered. I swear on my mother's grave. He studied her for a long moment. She was nothing. Worthless. What possible reason would she have to lie? His hand tightened slightly, and she saw the moment he considered taking what he'd always wanted from her, here in the dark woods where no one would hear her scream. A low growl rumbled through the forest. Not from the wolf behind her, it remained perfectly still, but from somewhere deeper in the dark wood. Something ancient and hungry had caught the scent of the hunting party. Marek released her with a shove that sent her sprawling. If we don't find it because of your directions, Omega, I'll be back for you. They left, crashing through the underbrush toward the white trees and whatever fate awaited them there. Lyra remained on the ground, counting to 100, then 200, before she dared to move. The wolf still lived, but barely. The strange shrinking illusion had faded, revealing its true enormous size again. Blood seeped through her makeshift bandages. We need to get you somewhere safe, she murmured, knowing it was impossible. She couldn't move it, could barely lift its massive head. The wolf's eyes opened, finding hers with disturbing clarity. Then, as she watched, it began to change. No, that's not possible. The transformation wasn't like normal shifting, not the smooth transition she'd seen pack members perform. This was something older, more primal. Reality seemed to bend around the wolf, shadows writhing, moonlight gathering despite the approaching dawn. The very air grew heavy with power that tasted of ancient winters and forgotten kings. Bones reformed with sounds like breaking mountains. Fur receded like tide waters. The enormous wolf body contracted and reformed, shaped by invisible hands into something that should not exist. A man, but not just any man. He lay naked in the frost-covered moss, his body a work of lethal perfection despite the wounds that translated from wolf to human form. Skin like polished bronze marked with scars that looked like runic symbols. Hair black as the void between stars. The silver markings from his wolf form had become actual tattoos that seemed to move across his skin, ancient symbols she'd only seen in forbidden texts. His face, gods above and below. His face was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, sharp, dangerous, crafted for purpose. High cheekbones, strong jaw, lips that spoke of cruelty and passion in equal measure. But she'd seen this face before. In paintings, in nightmares, in every Omega's terrified whispers about the Alpha who'd disappeared 3 years ago. His eyes opened still that burning amber, still blazing with that impossible power, and fixed on hers with recognition that went soul deep. Lyra, he whispered, her name on his lips like a prayer and a claim. Then the Alpha King, who'd been declared dead 3 years ago, whose throne sat empty while lesser wolves fought for scraps of power, closed his eyes and surrendered to unconsciousness. And Lyra Thorne, nobody Omega with no pack standing and no protection, found herself alone in the Darkwood with the most dangerous wolf in existence. The sun broke over the mountains, painting the forest gold. She was completely, utterly doomed. Lyra's hands trembled as she pressed them against the Alpha King's chest, feeling the weak but steady heartbeat beneath her palms. She dragged him gods knew how, adrenaline and desperation lending her strength deeper into the Darkwood, to a cave she'd discovered years ago while hiding from Marek's unwanted attention. The cave was more than a hollow in rock. It was an old wolf den from before the territories were established, carved by ancient claws and time. Phosphorescent moss grew on the ceiling, providing a dim blue-green glow. Bones of long-dead prey littered the corners, and strange symbols were scratched into the walls. 3 years. The Alpha King had been missing for 3 years, and everyone believed him dead. The council had even begun the process of selecting a new ruler, though none could agree on who should claim the throne. Wars had nearly broken out between the territories, and now he lay before her, bleeding out from silver wounds that refused to heal. "Don't you dare die," she murmured, her Omega instincts warring with common sense. Every part of her recognized him as Apex Alpha. Her body wanted to submit, to bare her throat, to offer itself in ways that terrified her. But the healer in her saw only a patient who needed immediate care. She'd managed to wrap him in her cloak, though it barely covered him. The cave held supplies she'd hidden over the months: herbs, clean water, bandages. She worked with focused efficiency, cleaning the wounds, applying moonbell paste to counteract the silver poisoning. His body was a map of violence. Beyond the fresh wounds, scars covered him in patterns that seemed deliberate, ritualistic. The moving tattoos pulsed with dim light, growing fainter as his life force ebbed. "Why did you know my name?" she breathed as she worked. "I'm nobody. Less than nobody." His eyes snapped open, making her stumble backward. For a moment, they blazed full alpha gold, the power in them enough to drop any wolf to their knees. Then they focused on her, and something else filled them: recognition, wonder, possession. "Not nobody," he rasped, his voice like distant thunder. "Mine." The word hit her like a physical force. Her Omega nature responded instantly, violently, a rush of heat and need that made her gasp. No. She'd heard of true mates, fated pairs, but that was legend, myth, and certainly not for throwaway Omegas like her. "You're delirious," she said firmly, forcing herself to continue tending his wounds despite the way her hands shook. "The silver poisoning is—" His hand caught her wrist, gentle despite its strength. "I searched 3 years. For you." "That's impossible. You've been missing for—" She stopped, the implications crashing over her. "You disappeared looking for—" No, that can't be right." He tried to sit up, failed, fell back with a growl of frustration. "At 23, I'd been king for 8 years. Too young, they said, needed a mate, but I knew you existed. Dreams, visions, always you, always running, always—" He coughed, blood speckling his lips. "Always saving me." "Stop talking," she ordered, surprising herself with her firmness. "You're making the wounds worse." But her mind raced. The Alpha King, ruler of all the territories, had abandoned his throne to search for. Her, a packless Omega who scrubbed floors and gathered herbs. "They're coming," he said suddenly, his body tensing. "Can smell them? Hours away, but who? Merrick? Worse." His amber gaze darkened. "The ones who took me, kept me. 3 years of—" He broke off, jaw clenching. "They found a way to hold even pure alpha bloodlines. Used me. Experiments with silver, trying to break the alpha bond, create weapons against our kind." Horror filled her. "Someone held you captive? Tortured you? Doesn't matter. Found you." His hand lifted, fingers brushing her cheek with impossible tenderness. "Worth it." "You're insane," she breathed, but couldn't pull away from his touch. Every cell in her body sang at the contact, recognizing something it had been searching for without knowing it. "What's your full name?" he asked. "Need to know." "Just Lyra. Lyra Thorne. I don't have a pack name because I'm not—" "You're mine," he said with absolute certainty. "My mate, my Omega, my queen." "Stop saying that." She jerked away, panic rising. "If anyone heard you, I'm nothing. I have no bloodline, no power, no—" "You saved me." His voice brooked no argument. "In the forest. You risked everything. An Omega protecting an Alpha. Do you understand how impossible that is? The biological imperative should have made you run, but you didn't. I'm a healer. I help whoever—" "Liar." He smiled then, a predator's smile that should have terrified her but instead sent heat pooling low in her belly. You felt it, the bond, the moment our eyes met. She had, God's help her, she had, like clicking into place, like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. It doesn't matter, she said desperately. Even if it's true, which it's not, you're the Alpha King. When you return, you'll need a proper mate. Someone with bloodline power standing, I need you. The simple statement, delivered with absolute conviction, broke something in her. Tears she'd held back for years. Years of being unwanted, overlooked, dismissed, suddenly escaped. Don't, she whispered. Please don't say things like that. When the silver wears off, when you're thinking clearly, you'll realize. He moved faster than someone so injured should be able to, pulling her down until she was pressed against his chest, his arms around her despite his wounds. She should have been terrified, a massive alpha holding her, vulnerable, his strength evident even in weakness. Instead, she felt safe for the first time in her life. My name, he said against her hair, is Darren Corin, and I have waited 3 years, suffered 3 years, survived 3 years for this moment. For you. The Alpha King's name is Aldrich. Throne name. Darren is my true name. The one my mother gave me before. He tensed. They're closer than I thought. She tried to pull away, but his arms tightened. We need to run. If they find you, they want me alive. You they'll kill. His voice went deadly. Or worse, once they realize what you are to me. Then let me go. I can lead them away. No. The alpha command in his voice should have forced her to submit, but somehow it didn't. She could resist him, she realized with shock. True mates could resist each other's commands. Another myth that was apparently fact. You stubborn, impossible. She stopped as she heard it too. Howls in the distance. Not normal wolves. These sounds were wrong, twisted, carrying a note of madness that made her skin crawl. Silver fangs, Darren growled. Wolves driven mad by silver poisoning, turned into weapons. They can't shift anymore, trapped between forms. That's not possible. 3 years of experiments, he said grimly. They did things, learned things, created abominations to hunt and control our kind. Pure alpha bloodlines react differently to silver than normal alphas. We survive it. But the pain, he shuddered. She helped him sit up, noting how the cave's strange symbols seemed to pulse brighter in response to his presence. What do they want? Control, power, to create an army of wolves that can't resist commands. He looked at her intently. But they didn't count on you. Me? You're not just anything. I can smell it on you, power locked away, hidden so deep even you don't know it's there. He touched her face again, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Someone hid your true nature very carefully. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed outside the Pulsin. Cave. Human, not wolf. Well, came a cultured voice that made Darren bare his teeth. The trail was harder to follow than expected. But silver calls to silver, doesn't it, my boy? Orin Varric stood at the cave's entrance, flanked by 2 massive wolves she recognized with sinking dread Merrick Dune and his second. But their eyes were wrong. Silver-tinted, controlled. The elderly counselor looked exactly as he did in the council chambers. Distinguished, refined, trustworthy. The perfect mask for a monster. Did you think you could hide forever? Orin stepped inside, his movements predatory despite his aged appearance. And with the lost Thorn daughter, no less. How wonderfully convenient. You know who I am? Lyra's voice came out steadier than she felt. Oh, my dear child. I've known exactly who you were since the day your mother brought you to the Northern Vale Pack. Arya Thorn was too clever for her own good, hiding you in plain sight. His smile was cold. But mothers always make one mistake: they can't bear to change their children's names. Lyra. Little Flame. Just like your grandmother before you. My grandmother? The last pure Omega born to our kind. Until you. Orin's eyes gleamed with fanatic fervor. Do you have any idea what you're worth? What power runs through your veins? Darren snarled, trying to rise despite his injuries. Leave her alone, Orin. Your fight is with me. My fight was never with you, boy. You were just a means to an end. 3 years of studying your pure alpha blood, learning how to replicate it, control it. He gestured to Merrick. Show them. Merrick stepped forward, and Lyra gasped. His partial shift was wrong. Silver veins ran through his fur, his claws were metallic, and his eyes held no trace of the man within. Beautiful, isn't it? Orin admired his creation. Strong enough to tear through any alpha, obedient as a trained dog, and best of all, no messy humanity to interfere with orders. You're insane, Lyra, whispered. I'm a visionary, and you, my dear, are going to help me perfect the process. He pulled out a vial filled with silvery liquid that seemed to move on its own. Pure alpha essence mixed with liquid silver. 1 drop would kill a normal wolf. But a pure omega? You could transform it into something miraculous. I'll die first. No, you won't. Orin's smile widened. Because if you don't come willingly, I'll have Merrick tear out your mate's throat while you watch. Silver-poisoned wounds don't heal, you know. He'll die slowly, painfully, and you'll feel every second through your bond. She felt Darren tense behind her, preparing to fight despite his wounds. They were trapped, outnumbered, outmatched. But then she remembered something her mother used to say. Power isn't about strength, little flame. It's about knowing when to let the fire free. You're right, she said suddenly, stepping forward. I'll come with you. Lyra! No! Darren lunged for her, but she evaded him. On one condition, she continued, meeting Orin's eyes steadily. You tell me the truth, all of it, about my grandmother, my mother, and why you've really been hunting pure bloodlines. Orin considered, arrogance making him careless. Very well, your grandmother was my mate. The bond was forced, not natural, but it gave me access to her power. When she died birthing your mother, that power transferred to Arya. I tried to claim her too, but she ran, hid, bound her own power so tightly I couldn't track it. And now you want me. I want what you represent, the ability to create wolves that are both powerful and controllable. With pure Omega blood as a catalyst, I can perfect the process. He stepped closer. Your grandmother's power lives in you, child. I can smell it locked away, but waiting. Waiting for what? The right moment to burn. Lyra smiled then, and Orin took an instinctive step back. Because her eyes had begun to glow, not the gold of alpha power, but something older, purer. White fire that had been sleeping in her blood for 20 years. You're right about one thing, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. My grandmother's power does live in me, but you forgot something important. Pure Omegas don't need permission to burn. We just need a reason. She looked back at Darren, her mate, wounded and willing to die for her. She'd found her reason. The moment Lyra's power awakened, the cave itself responded. The ancient symbols on the walls blazed to life, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The phosphorescent moss brightened from blue-green to brilliant white. Even the air changed, becoming charged with energy that made everyone's hair stand on end. Impossible, Orin breathed, but there was hunger in his eyes now, not fear. You shouldn't be able to access it without training, without you? Lyra laughed, and the sound carried power that made both corrupted wolves whimper. My mother bound my power to protect me from you. But bindings work both ways. They store power, compress it, let it build for years until light exploded from her skin, not harsh but warm like summer sunshine. Where it touched Merrick, the silver veins in his fur began to recede, dissolving like frost before flame. He screamed not in pain but in something like relief. Stop her! Orin snarled at his second wolf, but the creature hesitated, instinct warring with command. Lyra walked forward, each step deliberate, power flowing around her like water. 20 years of suppressed energy, 20 years of pure Omega essence building, waiting, growing stronger. You wanted my power, Orin? Here it is. She reached out, not physically but with her gift, and touched the silver corruption in Merrick's blood. It fought her at first, the twisted magic trying to maintain its hold. But she was Arya Thorne's daughter, granddaughter of the last pure Omega, and her bloodline was older than his manufactured abominations. No, Orin pulled. Another vial from his coat, this one glowing red. If I can't control you, I'll destroy you. He threw it at her feet where it shattered, releasing crimson smoke that reeked of iron and decay. Blood magic, the darkest kind, designed to poison pure bloodlines from within. But Darren was already moving. Despite his injuries, he threw himself between her and the smoke, taking the full brunt of the blood curse. He collapsed, convulsing as red veins spread across his skin. Darren! Lyra's control shattered. Power erupted from her in an uncontrolled wave that sent everyone flying backward. The cave shook, rocks falling from the ceiling. She dropped beside him, hands glowing as she pressed them to his chest. But the blood curse was different from silver, older, darker, feeding on life force itself. Can't, Darren gasped, his amber eyes already fading. Can't let it take you too. You're the last pure Omega. Without you, I'm nothing. Tears streamed down her face, each one glowing like liquid starlight. You searched for 3 years. You suffered for 3 years. You found me against all odds. I won't lose you now. But she could feel him slipping away, the curse eating through their barely formed bond. In desperation, she did something that shouldn't be possible. She reached not just for her power, but for his. Pure Alpha and pure Omega energies weren't meant to mix. Every text said so. The power would cancel out, create a void, destroy both wielders. Every text was wrong. When their energies touched through the bond, they didn't cancel, they amplified. Gold and white light twisted together, creating something new, something that hadn't existed since the first wolves walked the earth. By the ancient gods, Orin whispered, real fear in his voice now. You're not just pure bloods, you're a matched pair. Lyra didn't know what that meant, didn't care. All that mattered was the way their combined power burned through the blood curse like acid through paper. Darren's eyes snapped open, now swirling with both gold and white. Together, he said, his voice overlapping with harmonics that matched hers. They rose as one, hands clasped, power flowing between them in an endless loop. The cave couldn't contain it. Light burst through cracks in the stone, shooting into the sky like a beacon. Merrick, free from the silver control, had dragged the second wolf away from Orin. You enslaved us, he snarled at the counselor. Made us hunt our own kind. Made us monsters. I made you perfect. Orin pulled a final weapon, a blade that gleamed with the same silver corruption that had infected the wolves. If I can't have the power, no one can. He lunged at Lyra, the blade aimed at her heart, but Darren caught his wrist, moving with speed that shouldn't be possible for someone so recently injured. You tortured me for 3 years, he said quietly, his voice deadly calm. You poisoned my parents. You corrupted dozens of wolves. But your greatest mistake was threatening her. With his free hand, he touched Orin's chest. Gold-white light poured into the counselor, not healing but revealing, showing his true form. Orin aged rapidly, as years of stolen life force were stripped away. His hair went white, skin wrinkling, body shrinking. But worse was what appeared on his skin marks for every wolf he'd killed, every life he'd destroyed in his pursuit of power. Mercy, he wheezed, dropping the blade. Please, like the mercy you showed them? Darren gestured to the corrupted wolves. Like the mercy you showed my mother when you poisoned her slowly over months. I didn't. You did. Lyra stepped forward, her power reaching into Orin's memories, pulling them to the surface. You killed the queen because she discovered your experiments. You killed the king when he started investigating. You would have killed Darren as a child if he hadn't been too valuable. Images flashed through the cave, projected memories of Orin's crimes, visible to all. Marek growled, stepping forward with murderous intent. No, Darren said. He faces trial. Every pack will know what he's done. Death is too easy. You always were too noble, Orin spat. It's why you were so easy to capture. You trusted. His words cut off as Lyra touched his forehead. She didn't hurt him. Didn't need to. She simply removed his ability to lie. From now on, every word he spoke would be pure truth. A fitting punishment, she said. You'll confess everything, to everyone, whether you want to or not. Orin's eyes widened in horror as he realized the implications. A lifetime of lies and manipulation, and now he couldn't tell anything but truth. Merrick dragged him outside where more wolves had gathered, drawn by the light show. Word would spread quickly. The Alpha King lived, the corrupt counselor was captured, and a pure Omega had been found. Inside the cave, the light finally dimmed. Lyra swayed on her feet, exhaustion hitting her like a physical weight. Darren caught her, pulling her against his chest. "You saved me," he murmured into her hair. "Again. We saved each other." She looked up at him, noting how their mixed power had left marks. His amber eyes now held flecks of white, while she knew hers would carry traces of gold. What's a matched pair? Legend. Myth. A bond so perfect that the pair's powers become one. He touched her face gently. It hasn't happened in 1,000 years. They say matched pairs founded the first packs, established the territories, created the laws that govern our kind. And now we have to decide what to do with it. He looked toward the cave entrance where wolves were gathering. They'll expect us to return, to take the throne, to rule. Is that what you want? I want you safe. Everything else is secondary. She laughed softly. I just took down a corrupt counselor and freed a dozen enslaved wolves. I don't think safe is in my vocabulary anymore. Mine either, apparently. He pressed his forehead to hers. But together we're apparently capable of impossible things. A howl rose from outside, not threatening but celebratory. Then another joined it, and another, until the forest rang with the sound. The Alpha King lived. The corruption was ended, and hope, long strangled, began to bloom again. But Lyra felt something else in those howls: expectation. They would want their king back. They would want their new queen to be everything tradition demanded. I won't be a traditional queen, she warned. Good. I don't want traditional. I want you sharp tongue, reckless courage, glowing power, and all. Even if I completely restructure Omega rights, especially then. Even if I insist on teaching other pure Omegas to access their power, I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Even if I occasionally throw myself into danger to protect you, he growled softly. We'll negotiate that one. She smiled, reaching up to trace the new scars. On his chest, silver and red mixed, marking him as a survivor. You're going to be a difficult mate, aren't you? Says the woman who literally glows when angry. He caught her hand, pressing it flat against his heart. But you're my difficult mate. And you're mine. The words carried power, sealing something between them that was more than mate bond, more than matched pair connection. It was a choice, freely made, to face whatever came next as one. Outside, Merrick called. Your Majesties, the packs are gathering. They need to see you're alive. Lyra looked at Darren. Ready to face our kingdom? Our kingdom, he repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. But first, he pulled her into a kiss that was desperate and tender at once, pouring into it all the fear and relief and love of the past day. When they finally parted, both were glowing softly gold and white light mingling around them like a visible bond. Now I'm ready, he said. They walked from the cave hand in hand, into a crowd of wolves who dropped to their knees at the sight. But Lyra noticed something else. The corrupted wolves who'd been freed were changing, their silver marks fading, their eyes clearing. Her power was still working, spreading from wolf to wolf, healing damage that had been thought permanent. By dawn, every corrupted wolf in the territory would be free. My queen, Merrick said, and there was genuine respect in it now. My king, what are your orders? Darren looked at Lyra, deferring to her. She squared her shoulders, letting power fill her voice. Spread the word. Every pack, every territory. The corruption is ended. The Alpha King returns. And changes are coming, good changes, necessary changes. Any wolf who objects can challenge us directly. Both of us, Darren added, taking her hand. We rule as one or not at all. A murmur ran through the crowd, shock, excitement, hope. An Omega as true queen, not just mate but equal ruler. It was unprecedented. It was perfect. The throne room had never seen anything like it. Every alpha in the territories had come, along with their betas, their strongest warriors, and at Lyra's insistence, Omega representatives. The great hall overflowed with wolves of every rank, all waiting to see if the rumors were true. The Alpha King lived. A pure Omega had been found. and together they were reshaping everything. "They're not happy," Merrick reported from his new position as royal guard. After his forced enslavement and subsequent freedom, he'd sworn himself to Lyra's service with a devotion that surprised everyone, including himself. "Which ones?" Darren asked, adjusting the ceremonial robes he'd complained about for an hour. "The Northern Alphas think elevating an Omega is weakness. The Eastern Packs worry about bloodline dilution. The Southern Territories want proof of her power." Merrick paused. "And Elder Riona insists on a traditional mating ceremony before she'll acknowledge Lyra as queen. Elder Riona can..." Darren started. "Elder Riona can wait," Lyra interrupted, entering from the side chamber. She wore no crown, no elaborate gown. Instead, she'd chosen simple white robes that seemed to capture light, making her glow softly even without using her power. "We do this our way, or we don't do it at all." The argument had been going for 3 days. Traditional law said an Omega couldn't rule. Progressive voices argued that pure Omega bloodlines superseded normal restrictions. And a vocal minority wanted to know why they needed rulers at all if corrupt ones like Orin could seize power so easily. "Ready?" Darren asked, offering his arm. "To completely destroy centuries of tradition?" She smiled. "Absolutely." They entered the throne room together, and silence fell like a heavy curtain. 2 thrones sat on the dais, one ancient, carved from black stone, the other new, white marble shot through with gold veins. But they didn't go to the thrones. Instead, they stood before them, facing the crowd as equals to those gathered, not above them. "You came for answers." Darren's voice carried easily through the hall. "You'll have them. 3 years ago, I left to find my mate. I was captured by Counselor Orin Varick, who'd been conducting experiments with silver corruption for decades." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Orin himself stood in silver chains near the wall, compelled by Lyra's power to confirm every word with reluctant nods. "He tortured me, studied me, tried to break the pure alpha bloodline to create controllable weapons." Darren gestured to several wolves in the crowd. "Many of you have family members who disappeared. They were taken, corrupted, turned into silver fangs. But my mate," he took Lyra's hand, "freed them all." "Prove it," called an alpha from the Northern Territories. "Anyone can claim power. Show us this legendary pure Omega gift." Lyra stepped forward. "You want proof? Very well. How many of you are injured? Old wounds that never healed properly? Silver. Scars? Battle damage that aches every winter?" Dozens of hands rose slowly. "Come forward, all of you." They hesitated, but curiosity won. Soon, 50 wolves stood before her, alphas, betas, omegas, all bearing wounds that marked them as survivors. Lyra raised her hands, and light erupted from her skin, not the explosive force from the cave, but controlled, purposeful. It washed over the wounded wolves like warm water, seeking out damage, mending what was broken. An elderly alpha gasped as a decades-old limp disappeared. A young Omega touched her face in wonder as silver scars faded to nothing. One by one, wounds that had defined them for years simply vanished. But Lyra wasn't done. The light spread, reaching every wolf in the hall. Minor aches disappeared. Old grief loosened its hold. The touch of pure Omega power was healing in ways beyond the physical. When the light finally faded, Lyra stood unchanged, not even winded. The display of control, more than the power itself, left the crowd stunned. "Now," she said quietly, but her voice carried. "Let's discuss the real issue. Not whether I have power, but whether an Omega can rule." "Tradition," Elder Riona began. "Tradition said Omegas were property until 50 years ago," Lyra interrupted. "Tradition said pure bloodlines were myth until yesterday. Tradition changes, or it becomes a chain." "You would destroy our ways?" Another alpha challenged. "I would evolve them." She moved through the crowd now, power making her presence undeniable. "How many Omegas die each year because they can't defend themselves? How many packs war because there's no clear succession? How many corruptions like Orin's happen because power is concentrated in too few hands?" Silence met her questions. "I propose something new," Darren said, joining her. "Not alpha rule or Omega rule, but balanced rule. councils with equal representation, laws that protect all wolves, not just the strongest, power shared, not hoarded. And if we refuse? The Northern Alpha who'd demanded proof stepped forward, massive and scarred. If we challenge this break with tradition, then you challenge us both, Darren said simply. As is your right, the Alpha laughed. You're barely healed, boy, and she's an Omega. You think your pretty light show makes her a fighter? I think, Lyra said softly, that you're about to find out. The challenge circle formed instantly, wolves backing away to create space. Traditional combat shifted forms. No weapons, victory by submission or death. Lyra, you don't have to, Darren started. Yes, I do. She shed her outer robe, revealing practical fighting clothes beneath. If I back down now, I'll never have their respect. The Northern Alpha shifted immediately, a massive gray wolf with scars mapping his victories. He circled her, all predator, waiting for fear to make her run. Lyra didn't shift. She couldn't. Pure Omegas rarely could. Instead, she stood perfectly still, eyes closed, feeling the energy in the room. He lunged. She moved, not away but toward, her hand blazing with white fire as she touched his chest mid-leap. The Alpha crashed to the ground, not injured but paralyzed, his muscles refusing to obey. Pure Omegas can't fight, she said conversationally, walking around his frozen form. That's what everyone says. But my grandmother could stop hearts with a touch. My mother could command Alphas with a whisper. And I? She knelt beside him. I can feel every nerve in your body, every pathway of power. I could heal you or destroy you with the same gesture. She released him, and he scrambled back, still in wolf form but now wary. But I won't, because strength isn't about destroying opponents. It's about knowing when not to. She offered her hand. Submit, not to me, but to the idea that things can change, that they should change. The wolf stared at her extended hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he shifted back to human form and took it. You fight like no wolf I've ever seen, he admitted grudgingly. I yield. The crowd erupted, shock, admiration, fear, hope, all mixed together. An Omega had just defeated an Alpha in formal challenge. Not through strength, but through something entirely new. Any other challenges? Darren asked mildly. None came. Then let's talk about the future, Lyra said. Orin created monsters, but he also showed us something important. We're vulnerable to corruption when power is unchecked. So we create checks. Councils with rotating members, laws that require both Alpha and Omega consent, training for all wolves, regardless of rank. And if pure Omegas start appearing again? Elder Riona asked. Your display of power will awaken dormant bloodlines across all territories. Good, Lyra smiled. Let them awaken. Let them learn. Let them heal what's been broken for too long. She felt it then, a shift in the room's energy. Not acceptance yet, but possibility. The wolves were imagining something different. Something better. We'll need teachers, a young Omega called out. If we're to learn to defend ourselves, you'll have them, Lyra promised. And new laws? A Beta added. Written by who? By all of us, Darren said. Representatives from every pack, every rank. It will take time, probably years, but we'll build something that serves everyone, not just the powerful. The other kingdoms won't accept this, someone warned. They'll see it as weakness. Let them come. Darren's eyes flashed gold. We have something they don't: unity, purpose, and a pure Omega queen who can heal or destroy with a touch. That got nervous laughter, breaking the tension. We're not asking you to change overnight, Lyra said. We're asking you to try, to imagine something better, to help us build it. Merrick stepped forward. I was enslaved by the old way. Corrupted, controlled, forced to hunt my own kind. The Queen freed me not just from silver but from the system that allowed it to happen. I stand with them. Others began stepping forward. First a trickle, then a flood. Wolves who'd lost family to corruption, Omegas who'd lived in fear, even Alphas who were tired of endless territorial wars. By the time the sun set, the hall had transformed from a challenge to a council. Wolves of every rank sat together, planning, arguing, dreaming of what could be. And at the center of it all, Darren and Lyra stood hand in hand, glowing softly with their mixed light gold and white, Alpha and Omega, traditional and revolutionary. The old world was ending. The new one had just begun. 1 year later, the harvest moon hung full and bright over the United Territories, its light turning the palace gardens silver. Lyra stood on the highest balcony, watching wolves arrive from every corner of the realm for tomorrow's ceremony. "Still nervous?" Darren asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "About officially mating with you in front of 500 wolves?" Terrified, she leaned back against his chest. "About what comes after?" "Not at all." So much had changed in a year. The Council of Equals had been established, with representatives from every rank. The first Omega Defense Academy had opened, with Marek, of all people, as its head instructor. 3 more pure Omegas had emerged, their bloodlines awakening as Lyra had predicted. And tomorrow, under the harvest moon, she and Darren would complete the final ritual, the one that would either balance her pure Omega power or consume them both. "The text could be wrong," Darren murmured against her hair. "We don't have to." "Yes, we do." She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm already showing signs. The headaches, the fever dreams. Using this much power, this often pure Omegas weren't meant to sustain it alone. Either we share the burden, or in 5 years, maybe less. Don't." His arms tightened around her. "We'll do the ritual. It will work." Such certainty. "Always, when it comes to you." A knock at the door interrupted them. Marek entered, bowing slightly. "Your Majesties, she's here." They followed him to the private reception room, where a small, elderly woman waited. Her hair was white as fresh snow, her eyes the distinctive white gold of a pure Omega. "Grandmother?" Lyra breathed. "Not yours, child, but close enough." The woman smiled. "I'm Senna, your grandmother's younger sister. I've been hiding in the human territories for 60 years, waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For someone strong enough to change things. For a matched pair to emerge." Senna approached slowly, studying them both. "Your bond is true, I can see it. The way your powers have already begun to merge. But the ritual, it's not what the texts say." Lyra's heart sank. "It won't work?" "Oh, it will work, but not the way you think." Senna pulled out an ancient scroll, far older than anything in the palace archives. "The ritual doesn't just balance power between mates. It transforms you both into something new, something that hasn't existed since the first wolves." "What do you mean?" Darren asked. "Primels," Senna said simply. "Wolves who can shape change at will, who carry both Alpha and Omega traits, who live extended lives centuries, not decades. The first wolves were all primals before the bloodlines split." Lyra and Darren exchanged glances. "That's not possible. A year ago, you'd have said pure Omegas were impossible." Senna smiled. "The ritual was hidden because primals were too powerful. The other kingdoms feared them, hunted them. But now, with the territories united, with change already flowing, perhaps it's time for primals to return." "What's the catch?" Lyra asked. "There's always a catch. If the bond isn't true, if there's any deception between you, the ritual will kill you both instantly." Senna's expression grew serious. "And once transformed, you can never go back. You'll be something beyond Alpha or Omega. Some wolves will worship you. Others will fear you. Many will try to use you. So, normal Tuesday," Darren said dryly. Lyra laughed despite the gravity of the situation. "We've been dealing with worship, fear, and manipulation since we took the throne." "Then you'll do it?" They looked at each other, a whole conversation in a single glance. "Together," they said in unison. Senna nodded. "Then I'll oversee the ritual myself. Tomorrow night, when the moon reaches its apex." After she left, Lyra and Darren stood in silence for a moment. "Centuries," Lyra finally said. "We could live for centuries. Centuries of you arguing with the council, revolutionizing wolf society, and occasionally glowing when angry. Centuries of you being overprotective, impossibly stubborn, and addicted to those awful honey cakes from the kitchen. They're not awful, they're terrible, and you know it." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Centuries, Lyra. Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything. She traced the scars on his chest, silver and red mixed, marks of survival. We've already done the impossible. What's one more miracle? The next night, under the harvest moon, 500 wolves gathered in the sacred grove. The ceremony was unlike any mating ritual they'd known. No elaborate vows, no traditional exchanges. Just Lyra and Darren standing in a circle of ancient stones, Senna's voice rising in a language older than memory. When the moon reached its apex, power erupted from the earth itself. Not gold or white, but something deeper, the green of growing things, the blue of deep water, the silver of moonlight, all mixed together. The light engulfed them, and for a moment, every wolf present saw it the shape of something massive and impossible. Not quite wolf, not quite human, but perfectly, terrifyingly beautiful. When the light faded, Lyra and Darren stood transformed. Their eyes now held all colors and none, shifting like opals. Their hair carried streaks of silver that hadn't been there before. And when they moved as one being in two bodies, perfectly synchronized. The primals have returned, Senna announced, her voice carrying across the grove. May the gods help us all. But Lyra and Darren only had eyes for each other. How do you feel? He asked. Like I could reshape the world before breakfast. She flexed her fingers, watching energy dance across her skin. You? Like I finally understand why it took 3 years to find you. We weren't ready before. We had to become who we are separately before we could become this together. She smiled, and her new power made the expression luminous. So, ready to rule for a few centuries? With you, I'd rule for eternity. They kissed as the crowd erupted in howls, celebration, fear, awe, hope, all mixed together. The age of hidden power was over. The age of the primals had begun, and somewhere in the crowd, a young Omega girl watched with eyes that had just begun to glow, whispering to herself, if she can change everything, maybe I can too. Change, like power, was contagious, and Lyra intended to spread it to every corner of their world.